Good morning everyone, welcome to my ever messy art and design studio. My name is Sarah. Today we're going to be doing a short little video in Inkscape looking at the layers feature. I'm going to show you how to use the layers feature over in the free version of Inkscape. We're going to be looking at some tips and tricks for using that, how to use it in a document, and also how to use it in a document to make workflow that little bit easier, particularly if you're designing things with lots of different colorways. So let's get started. Before we get started, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Sarah. Hi, welcome to the channel. I talk about all things sort of art and design, making a little bit of extra money from home, print on demand, uploading to sites like Redbubble, using Creative Fabrica to download artwork, creating my own over on Inkscape and Critter, and also sometimes on my iPad. I haven't done many videos on that though. And basically just anything that's art and design and creating. I also paint, but I talk about that on another channel that I will leave down below. So if these things are interesting to you, please subscribe. It really helps out my little new channel over here if you hit the subscribe button. Thank you. And let's get on with the video. Alright guys, so here we are over in Inkscape, which is a free vector design program that you can download from the internet, and it doesn't cost you anything to use, which is fantastic. I don't have all the money for, like Photoshop and Illustrator, InDesign, all those bigger programs that charge by the month to use, and they can be quite expensive, particularly if you're doing this, to make a little bit of extra money from home, and it's not your full-time job, you're just getting started, and there are some excellent free tools here available in Inkscape. And so this is all to do with the layers tool that's over here. Now I know someone said in my last video that I don't yet have a tutorial showing you how to actually put all these over the side here, but you can find this layers tool here. If you go up to layers and click on this top one here, layers, it should pop it over onto here for you. So in your layers tool, I've already got three layers activated. I'm just going to open a new file just to show you from the actual start what you end up with when you first start on the program. So here we have a brand new document, and if you click up onto the layers over here, it should pop up over here for you, and you end up with just one layer, a plus and minus button, and a few things to do with blur and opacity over on the layer. Layers are good, and I'll just pop back over to this document here, because when you're working on a document, you can lock the layers, which means that you can't click or drag anything around, which is excellent when you're working with seamless pattern designs, or if you're wanting to only move some things off the page, or if you're trying to grab something and you can't do it, it can be very, very handy to lock things on a layer, and that way you can only move things that are on the other layer. You can also hide things. So as you can see, this is the text layer, and I can turn on the I button there to lock that on and lock that off. And then I have my pink dots on another layer, and I have that here. The reason I have that on another layer, I'll tell you in a minute. And then I have my background on another layer, and I'll explain why I've done that as well. All of those things are quite handy to have. If you've got different elements of your design, you can move them around the layers, and it is very handy. Now if you start and you are not thinking about those things, you can easily move things around between the layers when you are working as well. So if you start off, do it all on one layer, and you're like, oh no, I forgot about layers, you can definitely go back and fix that as well. Alrighty, so just going over to the new document here, which is the one that we have just started, which has nothing. How do we work this? So, well, we add a layer, and it says you can name the layer, so we're just going to call this the next layer, so you can see that, and you've got the option of putting it above the current or below the current, or as a sub layer, so that's sort of headings and subtitles, I guess you could say, of a layer, which could be also quite handy. I am just going to put it below the current for the moment. I'm going to add that in, and you can see it pops in here. And if we click back onto this one, so whichever one you have highlighted is your active layer, so we're just going to click back on, or we can change that. So let's just call this main layer. So you can also change the titles of things after you have created them. Let's add another layer here, and we're going to put it above the current this time, and we're going to call this the very top layer. Very, very descriptive titles there. And as you can see, you can change the name of each layer by just double clicking on those, which is very handy. You can also delete a layer. So if you want to, you can click and delete a layer. And you can also duplicate a current layer as well. And the main layer, it's gone above that, but that's okay. You can also, if you right click on any layer, you can also lower the layer as well, and that will move it down, or we can raise the layer and move it back up again as well. So you're not stuck with whatever you have done, which is very, very handy. So you've got add a layer. You can also add a layer by right clicking in the layers, and you can add a layer. You can rename the layer, or you just double click on it like I have just done. Show or hide other layers. Look, we'll get to that. It's sort of a little bit more advanced there. Show layers, hide all layers, lock and unlock. Let's just leave all those. It's easier just to use the lock buttons over on here and show and hide the buttons here, I find. Other than the duplicate, the delete and the raise and lower, I don't often right click, and I use the tools as they are on here. Sometimes in the sidebar, if you click on another option, your layers button disappears, and to get that back again, either you'll find it down here, or you can go back over to the layers, where you can also have your all your little shortcuts and things here as well. So you can also add a layer from here, and that will come in here. So again, layer, and the switch to layer above and below means that you switch the active layer. I just click on it. It makes it so much easier rather than coming over here and doing anything over here. The only thing this is good for is you can see the shortcut functions, which if you're working and you're just using your your left hand to pop in those different commands, that can be quite handy. And over here we also have another feature, which is move selections to layers above and below. So I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to import some art into here, just so you can have a little bit of a quick idea of how that might work. So to import art into Inkscape, you first of all need to have some artwork on your computer, but for the moment, if you don't have anything much, you can actually just use photographs or photograph and a piece of text or something along those lines. So let's bring in, we'll go down to import. And oh, look, there we go. We are just going to import this design here. Was that a PNG or a JPEG? PNG, excellent. PNG is a transparent file and it won't have a white box around it, which is what I do not want. And I have put that on the very top layer. And I'm going to import another picture, which is going to be this one here. Doesn't matter, just import a picture. Okay, now that has come in on the top there. Now, if you want this to be above, you've got a couple of options. You can either, raise your other image up through, using these, or you could do it through the layer tools as well. Particularly useful if you want to be able to hide this in some, for some reasons, or anything like that. So what we're going to do in this case is we're going to select our image. We've put them all on the same layer, and we want to move things around. So we're just going to pop over to layer, and you can move the selection to the layer below, or you can move selection to layer and then choose from whatever layer you want to put that on, and that will move it automatically behind. And from there, with these tools here, if you click the I button, that will go away. Okay, and when you are exporting, whatever layers you have active is what you're going to export. So if I was to export this image, I'm going to export just this without the call out button as well. So if you're wanting to export a couple of options, one with that and one without that, a picture with text and a picture without text, that's actually quite a handy feature to do, because you can turn off the layer that you don't want to export, and then you can then you can export that, which is very handy. And you can move these things around the layer. So again, like this picture here, if you want to go move it to the layer below, actually we don't want to do that. We want to move this selection to the layer below that, and it's going to pop down behind that call out. And when you're moving things up and down in the layer, it will only move it within the layer. So if I was to try and bump this up, I can't because it's on the lower layer. So if you want this picture back above this little call out, you'll have to move it back to the next, either to this layer or the layer above it, if that makes sense. So these buttons here will not raise anything or lower anything above or below the layer, above or below it, if that makes sense. So it only works on things that are in the same layer. Okay, so that's the basic, very, very basic tools with that. There are some other options. I'm just going to go ahead and quickly layer. I'm going to move the selection to the very top layer again, so it goes above the call out. The other thing you can do, so as you see, when I've clicked on this, it's taken it to this layer. And if I click on this design, it actually takes us back over. It re-highlights the top layer. So I'll just show you that again. So we're working on the main layer, and if I turn that off, you can see that's where we are. And if I click back on the person, we go back to the very top layer, which is where I currently have that person sitting there. The other thing you can do is you can change opacity and blur on a layer. Sometimes this can be quite handy. So as you can see, that's just reduced the opacity of a layer. Actually quite handy if you're wanting to put like a text overlay or a text, like a text behind something, but you want to drop down the opacity on just the text. That's actually quite a handy little wee feature to know. And you can either use the plus and minus features there or use those. You can also, there is also a, oh no, we won't do that, that's fine. And then there's also the blur function, which, oopsie-doo, let's just Control Z that. I don't often use that very much at all. It's very difficult with pictures and things, but I definitely use the opacity quite regularly. There is also some more advanced features, which I am not going to go into today, to do with blend modes, which is a little bit more challenging, and it's to do with how the colors or the layers are going to blend together with each other, and they are quite useful for doing some actual drawing and things in Inkscape, and we are not going to go into those today. But at least you know that they are actually there if you are looking for those tools, and you know what you're doing with graphic design, and when you wanting to multiply a layer or put in some other things with that there. Alright, so that's just the very, very basics of layers. I don't think there's anything else in there that I am going to show you how to do. Again, you can duplicate or delete a layer from here. Raising layers, yes, I will show you how to do that. You can move the layers around. You don't just need to move an item off a layer. So if you've decided that you want all of the call outs on this layer to be above the person, and you don't want to have to select them all and raise them up the layer, you can actually switch the layers around. A couple of ways you can do that. You can drag them. It gets a little bit messy from time to time, and as you can see, that's putting those sub layers in. You can just switch the layers. So here we have our main layer and a layer. I would like to move the layer, so we can raise the layer. And as you can see, that's moved my main layer to the top, above the very top layer. So that's also quite handy if you're wanting to move things around your workspace as well. Alrighty, so we're just going to pop back over to the piece that I was playing with the other day. So this was just a book, like a cover for a diary. I had a diary when I was little that was just covered in blah 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 blah, and I was like, oh, let's recreate that. So here is my seamless design, and I have some videos that show you how to do seamless designs here in Inkscape. It's quite easy, showing how I did that, and all I did with this was just create lots of different text. I'll show you. Oopsie-doo. Sometimes that happens when you're working with the layers. If nothing's working, have a check over here to make sure you're not got anything being clicked in there. Sometimes you just need to click off whatever it is you're doing before, because I'm using the plus and minus keys on the keyboard to zoom in and out. yeah, sometimes that happens. Yeah, so all I did with this was I created some little designs over here, changed some text fonts around and moved them over here and combined them into the this seamless pattern. But why layers are really good here is, as you can see, I've got the background. I can turn it on and turn it off. Now, because my background here, I don't actually have a white square behind there. If I was to export this like this, it will come out transparent. The background will be transparent, which is PNG, which means there won't be a white square behind there, which means I can put that onto a black t-shirt, not black t-shirt, a white t-shirt, and you won't have printed white in between. It will just be the t-shirt, so it makes it a little bit better. You could put it on, say, like a blue t-shirt, and instead of having you know, a white square around it, you'd have the blue in between the text, which is quite handy. Whereas this, obviously, you get just a square print placed on top of a shirt. And I have so that my text layer there is locked. That just means that if I click and drag the text, as you can see, I've actually just clicked and dragged the background, and it won't grab my text for me. So just Control Z and move that back where it is. But what is very handy, we're going to add a layer, and I'm going to put it below current, and I'm going to call it background 2, and we're going to add that in. And I am going to lock all of these layers, and in fact I'm actually just going to turn them all off for the minute, and I'm going to put in another background. Now I know this is needs to be 16 inches, so let's just pop this back up 2 inches up here, and I'm just going to turn my square to a 16-inch square, and a line in distribute, and relative to the page I'm just going to align it in the center and the center like that. Pop back over to my layers. Here's my background layer. I'm going to change it to another color because you can't see my pink dots. Well, you won't be able to see my pink dots. Just turn off that background. And I'm going to change, but just by selecting that layer, and I'm just going to change it to this sort of blush pink color just by clicking on the color down below here while this is selected, and that's clicked on there. And what that means I can do, if I was to add in a whole heap of different background colors in there, I can turn on and off what color background I want to actually see, and you can get an idea of what's going to look good as a background behind your design, which is quite handy. Or if you want to export out lots of different versions of your design, you can do that. So quite easy. I don't need to redo this design if I want to change the color of the background. I just put another layer and do it that way. Now, the other reason I have my dots here, my pink dots you can see here, on a isolated layer is because I can do the same thing with that. Now, I have these also all grouped. I'm going to lock all layers except my dots. That means that when I click on anything in here, the only thing I'm going to, oh sorry, that's the layer I want to be able to get to. It's these ones I want locked, sorry, wrong way around. When I click on my screen, the only thing I can actually click on is my dots. When you have a very busy and active design with lots of stuff going on, sometimes it can be hard to isolate exactly what you're looking for. So having things isolated on layers, and you can lock, also helps. It saves you from accidentally dragging anything around. And because I'm working with a seamless design here, any movements left or right, even by 1 pixel, the tiniest amount that you're not going to notice, is going to affect the ability of this design to tile seamlessly, which is not what we want. Now these dots I actually just made with the dot function over here. And because I have done that, when I want to change the color of those dots, I just click the button down here and it will change the color for me, which is excellent. I'll just Control Z and move that back to pink. So if I want to add a layer, and I'm going to add it below the current, just because, and it's not going to be color dots, we're going to call this light pink. Okay, so we've got now a light pink layer. I am going to lock my dark pink layer and just reselect this. Oopsie, color dots. Light pink, enter, okay. There we go, so that's light pink here, and if I select, why is that not working? Let me just get this sorted. Sorry, I did the wrong thing there. Let's just delete that layer completely. Alright, sorry, getting a little bit ahead of myself. So color dots pink here. Alrighty, what we want to do is we want to duplicate the layer, not add a layer. We want to duplicate the layer below here. Sorry about that one. Alrighty, so color dots pink. I am going to turn that one to locked, and I'm just going to leave my new one open, and I'm going to change this to light pink. Okay, sorry, it's been a very long day. Alright, color dots light pink, and I'm going to select those, and we are just going to change that over to a pink color. And you're like, what? It's not changing. It's because it's directly under the this dark pink layer here. So if we turn that layer off, the layer that's going to be visible is the one underneath it, which is these light pink dots. And that light pink does not really work at all. So let's just change that up a color there for you. So there we go. And then if we turn on our dark pink, because it's the layer above, that's the layer you're going to see. And we'll just close that one off, and we can turn off this background, and we now end up with dark pink dots on a light pink background. And if we change that around, we're going to end up with light pink dots on a pink background. Doesn't quite work, but there we go. Or we could change, maybe put that as dark pink on the green back to like that. And so you can have a bit of a flick through and see which ones you like the best. Alrighty, so I guess that's a very quick introduction into layers over on Inkscape. They're very, very handy. They're amazing for ease of workspace. It also means that if you've got like a design that you don't want to mess about with, you don't want to accidentally click or drag anything, if you take a copy of it and put it onto a layer that you lock, and you call that layer, something like I do this a lot actually, don't touch this layer, you end up with a copy of something that you don't want to touch. Inkscape's great like that, because you end up with this sort of workspace around the outside edge. So this is my page. I made my page 16 inches by 16 inches, and when I select page on export here, that's what will export. But I also have created like lots of little things on the side, because I was messing about with fonts, and also this is the this bit here is the design that it's locked on the layer. I exported over to put on the front of the hat versus the what I put over onto like for the book covers and things like that. You just get a little bit of workspace. You don't have one option here. I don't have to work on different documents in order to input the art into this particular document of Inkscape, so it's really handy. So just as a quick refresher, we'll pop back to over here. You have layers, accessing either from here when you hit layers. You can also access it from layers and layers. You can drag layers around here. Well, let's just put it underneath, which is not really what we want to do. Let's put that back up here. You can also move them around by going layer, raise the layers. You can add a layer here. You can choose where you want to pop it. You can, as I said, the switch to layer above and below, just change your working layer. That's not really very handy. I'd much prefer just to click on the layer that I'm looking for. Move selection to layer above and below, so if you select on a particular item, you can layer and move it to the layer above or below, or move selection to layer. I generally tend to find move selection to layer more useful than the move selection above and below, just because I then get to choose, and I'm 100% sure where that's gone. I don't have to check. And you can move the layers around themselves, so this is the part where if you need to move a layer, you can raise the layer above where it might be. So layer, you can raise the layer up to there. Again, there's the opacity of the layer, which you can also do as well. And then just popping back here again, very, very handy to work with layers when you are wanting to lock particular aspects of your design so you can't move them around, whether you when you want to turn aspects of your design on and off. Particularly handy when you're doing backgrounds in different colorways, or you want a complete transparent background and you can take off all of your background layers there, and that will just export basically just the text and the docs. You won't end up with a white square around it, so that's quite handy. Anyway, so that's a brief introduction to layers over on Inkscape, and I hope that is helpful. Any requests for any other videos, do let me know. I do have a bit of a backlog. I've had the kids homesick for the last week or so, which has been a bit challenging, and I hope you have a lovely day and enjoy working over in Inkscape. See you later, guys.